I take it, I'll call the meeting to order. Phil Lively probably will not be with us. His wife was in the hospital and is seriously ill. So I would gather that she did not improve today. So, may I have the roll call?
Thank you. Commissioner Tonelli?
Here.
Commissioner Whitmer?
Here.
Chair Christensen?
Here.
And Commissioner Lane?
Here.
Okay. May we have the approval of the minutes?
I made a couple of minor suggestions on some updates. Just there was more than one lane in one of the paragraphs, and I thought I would scare everybody. It said lane, so on page 3 there's multiple lanes, which I know everybody will be worried about. Right down here, it says lanes right there. That's the only minor. Any other?
Good grief.
I didn't want my wife to be blamed for anything.
Yeah.
And the other.
I didn't catch that.
The other thing was a question about whether or not we wanted to highlight when you recused yourself that Mr. Lively took over the leading of the meeting. That's in the first paragraph in the first page. So normally I would say that for the record that we wanted to indicate somebody was running the meeting.
Right.
Yeah, it's a nit, but one of those things that might be useful.
Well, I think that would be, yes, useful as to who did take over and so forth.
Right. We have to have somebody to blame.
Well, it certainly took more. All right, may we have a motion approving the minutes with the changes that you have suggested?
And was there anything else? Oh.
I had one typo.
Okay, okay, I moved as amended.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those against? The minutes are approved. This is the time in our meeting where the public can make comments for items that are not on the agenda. Would either one of you care to make a comment?
I believe our issue is on the agenda, sir.
Oh,
Yeah, I think it's already on, it's to do with the BMX track.
Yeah.
That's on the agenda, so that's
okay.
fine, thanks.
Motorcycle.
Track, okay.
Motorcycle bike thing. Yeah.
We'll move on to commissioners' reports. Shall I start with you, Paul?
Well, I can just give you a little bit of an update on the Civic Center Advisory Committee. And we had a meeting last night, which I was absent from. However, we did have a public workshop last week, which we thought was fairly successful. Just under 50 residents showed up to express their opinions and visions of what this space could look like, and it was very interactive. They had a chance to get up and work with different maps and place things where they thought things should be placed, and buildings that they thought should be retained, and others that they didn't care about. So it was really very constructive, and we're going to have another one of those a little bit later in the fall. And our next order of business is to break out into 5 different neighborhood meetings at the end of October through the early part of November to kind of break things down a little bit more with the neighborhoods and make things a little bit more intimate. And by that point, the design firm that's coming up with the master plan should have a better idea of what the plan is going to look like, and that'll be another step in the process of getting more feedback from the residents to kind of fine-tune the master plan that's being developed. There's details on the website. I wish I had the dates of the community meetings. I don't have them handy with me. I think it's going to be a great opportunity for more residents to chime in on the project. So things, we're trying to keep things as transparent as possible and keep people informed as much as possible as to what's going on, and giving them as much of a chance as possible to put in their 2 cents as well. So it's kind of an update for our county.
Did any of the comments by the public change any of the committee members' minds on something?
Well, there's not really anything, and the minds haven't been really made up about anything yet. We're still kind of developing ideas,
Getting information.
Right, exactly.
More than
Mhm.
anything else.
and we're just kind of dealing with a blank slate at this point.
Mhm.
Except for trees.
Excuse me?
Trees stay.
Yeah, for the most part. Yeah, the trees are an issue, but
Build around.
Oh, preservation of trees? yeah.
yes, believe me, the trees have been mapped out.
Uh-huh.
It's been very detailed.
Oh, okay. Mary Beth?
I don't have any reports.
Eric?
I don't have any work, I was just looking at the website, I didn't see a date on the website yet either. It must be there at a different spot, I got the email. But the communication on this process is much improved over what I've seen before.
And that's been one of our goals.
Yeah, actually, communication for the city in general is exponentially improved over the last few months. So
Mhm.
every level of opt-in and ongoing communication about meetings and what's going on in meetings and visibility, that's the way it should be. So that'll help people stay engaged and involved. Other than that, I don't have anything to report.
Okay, I'd like to report on the council meeting on the Little League proposal. The council held at the beginning of September a study session, and I presented our situation. There were, I think, 3 other speakers who all spoke in favor of modifications to the Little League proposal. The president of the Little League organization spoke and seemed to, this is editorializing, seemed to be quite convinced that by winning the election, they obtained automatic approval for their proposal. The meeting was then closed, or the commissioner, the councilman discussed the various aspects. The long and short of it is, I think Councilman Widmer made some suggestions in regard to the portable foul poles, and the removable fence from the batting, not the batting, the
Foul
pitching.
lines.
Yeah, along the foul lines.
Right.
Mhm.
And the scoreboard, I'm not sure where they end up, as well as the some discussion on the size of the stadium. So it was all to go to staff and to be presented at the actual council meeting in the middle of September. However, the Little League has withdrawn its proposal, and I can assume from that maybe there'll be modifications to the proposal based on what they heard. Perhaps, Lisa, you might be able to tell us more.
Sure. We did meet with Little League after the meeting to go over the council comments and to see where they wanted to make modifications. They were very open to the temporary foul poles. I think that was something they found a solution. We're just trying to figure out a maintenance, how they're moved and who takes care of that. The other issues, I think they were a little concerned about making changes, but then I believe they've had further conversations and they need some additional time to work with their architects on possible modifications to the structure itself, to the seating area. So they've asked for a delay so they can work with their architects, and the Little League contacts, I believe, are also have some business traveling out of town, and so they've asked for kind of an extended time in order to work on some design modifications. I'm not sure at this point when it will go back to the city council, but we can.
I should also add that Commissioner Lively and Woodmer attended the meeting, but did not speak.
So, and it seemed to me, and you kind of addressed this, that they were under the impression that by winning with Measure M or whatever it was, that it guaranteed them certain aspects of the measure,
Well,
without modification.
I would say it guaranteed them all aspects of their proposal. The president was quite forceful in stating that belief. Obviously, we, in our recommendations, disagreed, and the other, I think 3 speakers also disagreed. So right now, I think we wait and see. I'm sure there'll be some modifications. Exactly what they'll be,
I don't know at this
I
point.
don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but now for the record, or for maybe, I don't go to those meetings specifically so that there's a sort of a sense that I'm not trying to influence the council above what we do here. So I didn't go to the civic committee and the civic action committee for that reason either. I normally would, you know, as a citizen, I normally would be involved in those type of things, particularly the civic aspect of it, and I was up until I got on the board. The few meetings that were years before. So I still need some guidance on what's best to do on that, because I always feel like if I go, then people will think I'm biased when it comes before us, and if I don't go, then people don't think I care. So, I'm in a lose-lose situation, and I care, but I don't want to be considered biased.
So, a couple different things. We have no problem with general attendance. I think information is really important to what you do, and I don't have a problem with that at all. I don't feel like it subjects you to any kind of criticism, unfair criticism. I think the problem that we have pretty much comes up when you want to say something. Because, and again, there's sort of a absolutely cannot and a probably should not. You know, that distinction, and so I feel like there are times when it's kind of in a gray area. If you want to get up and identify yourself, you know, I am Joe Smith, I live whatever, I'm appearing as a resident, even though we all know I'm a planning commissioner, everybody still knows who you are, and if you make a statement, I am against issue X, you have now indicated that you're going to vote a certain way.
Right.
So that subjects you to all kinds of problems. One of them is constitutional. Everybody has a right to due process. When they come up and they're an applicant for something, they have a right to have the people who are judging be very neutral and to learn information as it's presented and to not come in with their own opinion. If you have publicly stated elsewhere, I'm just never going to vote on that, I'm totally opposed to it, even if you say, well, I really considered it thoroughly, it's very, very difficult for somebody to believe that. And that is where we come back and say, your job is very important. The Planning Commission is unique in that it's got this quasi-judicial role that you play, and so that's where we take this very seriously.
Right. Well, and that's
So that's sort of where we come down. So
one of the experiences that I've had when I was on the County Planning Commission was, and it was it's dealing with siting a dump site, which is there's 3 things you need to do in your life to really appreciate the planet the way it is, and that one of them is siting a dump site, the other is siting a homeless shelter, and the third is redistricting a school district. Those 3 things will make you loved and hated at the same time. The thing that I just want to go on record is I'm very interested in these issues, but I'm also want to make sure that we don't get into this loop of, even what I've found is that even if somebody walks up to you at those meetings and starts talking to you about it, the fact that you don't agree with them or you do agree with them is captured and it's sort of restated. So it's just something that I'm very aware of, and some of the things around some of these topics are more heated than they need to be, in the sense of just like let's be neighbors on this. So I'm overly conscious of that. So I'll take your cue on. You have a role on the civic committee, so I'll take your updates probably as my primary source.
Boy, they leave you lacking some information.
Yeah. Well, that on the end. I may come to some of them.
But I think the architectural firm was specifically hired because they have a really good outreach and want to really have a good presence on the website. So I think following this meeting, the notes are probably going to get posted on the website and more updates. So that'll also be a great source of information for you.
All right.
But I would I take your point, but if the issue is already out of the Planning Commission
Yeah, that's a totally different thing.
I would think that if the individual does not identify himself as a member of the commission, he would be able to speak. Let's just take the Little League proposal. He would be able to speak as an ordinary citizen on that. So,
Yeah, the only reason I don't do that is because if there's a direction by the council to send it back to the planning commission for
Could
reconsideration,
happen, yeah.
then you're stuck.
Could happen
Happen.
and very well may happen.
Mhm.
And now you're in a position where I unfortunately would have to come and say to you,
You can't
you
be
need
here.
to recuse
Yeah,
yourself.
Right.
And I don't wanna have to do that, and you don't wanna lose, I mean, this is a very wonderful and special place to be, sitting up here, representing the
Oh,
town.
yeah, that's
and
what I
it-
was thinking.
Wonderful and special. Well, and, I mean, it really is, and you really do have the opportunity to be shaping your community, and I think to really respect that is to look at yourself and say, okay, is it really worth it to go to this meeting and make my feelings known? And if it is really, really worth it, then you're going to need to recuse yourself on that issue because you've really made your feelings known, and then you can't serve in the role that you've promised to serve in up
but
here.
at that meeting on the Little League proposal, we had a park commissioner identify himself as a citizen
Okay.
and spoke against the Little League proposal.
They
It
have
might
a
go back to
lot
the,
less power over there than you do. And
oh, we
I
do have power.
But you do have, it depends on what it is, but you do, I mean, the planning commission we keep coming back to, you know,
Has a lot of authority.
is a step between the city council and all the other commissions and committees. Because you really do make decisions on things, and I know that they're immediately appealable to the city council, but you still aren't making decisions, and that is unlike any other body outside the city council. So it really is important to remember what you're doing, and that does subject you to, you know, the procedural due process that, you know, people are supposed to have. And I think that's what you would want if you were to come before the planning commission as a citizen and expect everybody up here to be taking their jobs really seriously and to come to it with an open mind. And if you can't do that, that's absolutely okay, but then you need to step aside. So if you've already decided on something, for example, the Little League, you know, then maybe you need to consider whether or not you're able to truly look at it with an open perspective. Because when you're up here, you're representing the town. It's not how you personally feel.
Right.
And your job is to really, you know, be the brain that processes the really diverse amount of information that's out there, and then put out what you think is best for the town. And if you have such a strong opinion about it, that you're out talking about it in public, maybe that's not an issue that you want to be weighing in on at this level.
I bring it up because.
Yeah, I
it's
think,
one of those-
I think it's a very important
Yeah.
Right,
matter.
particularly with this, there's some big issues going on in the
Sure.
community right now, and I think we're all here because we've been involved with those, thinking around those issues, so that's why I brought it up.
And since Little League was brought up, is it feasible that it would be sent back to us now that they're in a modification stage?
I think it depends on the extent of the changes,
Mhm.
right? So if it comes back and it's a significant alteration from what you saw before, then the council may want to send it back. So we need to
But
see
your
what they're
role,
gonna
your
do.
role was a different role, your role was to represent
He was
the.
authorized to represent,
Authorized
yes.
to
Right.
discuss
Yeah,
this, so
correct.
it was not a personal thing, it was a a sort of an embodiment
Yes.
of the thinking
Mhm.
of the board,
Mhm,
of the commission.
mhm.
Well, we could go on for a while on this one, but I think there is definite danger in someone speaking and letting his opinions be known in a public meeting. There's no question about that. Discretion should be used. We'll move on to our new business. Tonight, we are going to finally.
Did you have anything? to say?
Just some
Oh, I'm
staff
sorry.
reports. I was just gonna let you know
I
that.
can't see the staff report.
No problem. Sacred Heart requested a continuance. They were scheduled for the September city council meeting. Their team wasn't able to be present, specifically the traffic consultant, which I think is a pretty key part of their team. So they requested a continuance to the December meeting. They did make a commitment that they will continue the TDM measures in the meantime.
Okay. Anything else like this? No. Item number 6 on the agenda as the selection of the chair and vice chair. I might suggest, and it doesn't make a great deal of difference to me, but with Phil not present,
I was gonna suggest that.
I would suggest that we postpone it to our next meeting.
Okay.
Do we need to make that into a motion, or?
Oh, do you want it in a motion?
No, I don't worry about it.
Okay. Consensus to continue the hearing?
Okay.
I see heads nodding.
Yes.
We have an audience of two. Would anybody have an objection to moving your item ahead of the other two?
You want that to happen?
That would be great.
Is that all right?
That would be much appreciated.
Yeah.
Is that all right with all?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, let's do the athletic court regulations, number 9.
Thank you. As indicated in your staff report, we received a complaint about the construction of a dirt bike track, and specifically the intent was to use it for pedaled bicycles. I'm not sure about the correct terminology there, but mounds of earth were placed too close to the property line. So when we became aware of it, we contacted the property owner, met with them, and it was staff's interpretation that those dirt mounds constituted an athletic court, and as such needed to meet the setback requirements. So applicant complied as far as moving the mounds out of that area, so they're meeting the 10-foot setback requirement. They've indicated that they do intend to come forward with, a plan professionally prepared, addressing any drainage issues, and requesting a permit to have those dirt mounds for the intended use. They've also indicated that they would heavily screen the area. So in speaking with the adjacent resident, there was kind of some ongoing concern, well, what if this happened on another property, and this would be something that the town would regulate. So I indicated the process for a change to the code is the planning commission could initiate a zoning code amendment if you felt it was something that had, good townwide applicability and you wanted to see a change to the code. So the neighbor has given some suggested items for your discussion. Our code is pretty general, as you know, it just says athletic courts shall meet certain setback requirements. There's no lighting allowed, but beyond that, we really don't have a lot of very specific requirements in that code section. We have, height limitations for nets. We have hours for pool equipment usage, but beyond that, we don't have other objective criteria for athletic courts. So I'm just kind of open to your discussion if this is something you would like to initiate a code amendment for.
Well, before we discuss it, I'd like to call on one of you or two of you to tell us the situation and why it's before us.
Opening the public hearing.
Yes, I'm opening a.
This
is really discussion.
None of these items is a public hearing,
Okay.
but it's always good to take public input, so you don't have to officially open or officially close. It's just a discussion item. None of these items were publicly noticed, so other people in the community are not aware. So maybe since we have some new commissioners, talk a little bit more about the process, sorry. If this is something you want to initiate, I could bring back at the next meeting kind of more formal discussion. And then once we have something that looks like an ordinance, that would be something I would publish in the newspaper that you're considering an ordinance amendment. We would post it, may even want to do a e-notify to let people know about it, because there's not a lot of good communication in town. And then it would come back to you for consideration. If you were to recommend it, it would go up to city council, and they need to look at it at 2 different meetings. So the first meeting is the introduction, the second meeting is the adoption, and then it would be effective 30 days after that.
Okay.
So there's a long process to do code amendments, and they're supposed to be very thoughtful.
It's almost like an agenda public hearing, study session.
Right.
Well, it'd be just,
That's what this is tonight.
should be an informal discussion
Right.
of whether we want to proceed to a more formal status.
Okay. Thank you.
Why don't you, both of you or one of you, come on?
Just make sure.
I guess.
So we're recording, do we record it?
Yeah, it'd be easier if she stood at the podium. That'd be great.
Okay. Well,
Okay, my name is Nancy Mason, and my husband Christopher Poda and I live at 35 Adam Way. And the home immediately behind us has been under construction for a while, and we happened to notice that they were constructing an unusual thing there, and it turns out it's a BMX track, which stands for motocross bicycle. Usually these are, these are things that you generally find in a large public park, such as Burgess Park, an area that's surrounded by a lot of land. And they were constructing it right on the fence line. And so that's when, and it was, the town was unaware that this was even on the plan, so they had not received any permission really to build this in the first place. And so it's kind of an unprecedented structure in the town. We have a number of concerns about it related to the fact that even though they've moved it 10 feet from the fence line, the structure comes up about 5.5 feet high, and it's a series of berms that are, I'd say about 6 feet wide, made out of packed earth. And these will not be paved in any way. It's basically a pile of dirt that's been compressed, and it goes in it's a track. It goes in a circle, in an elliptical fashion, and has a turnaround at each end. And this is for the intended use for, going out and racing bicycles on that. We're concerned about the fact that we don't think a 1 acre lot is sufficient space for something like this, that it's going to, stir up dust. It's going to be a noise and nuisance factor. And when we started discussing this, they had really no plans at all for putting in any kind of plantings except between the BMX track and their home, but nothing between the BMX track and us. And so since we've been discussing this with planning and with, the arborist, since we brought this to their attention, they've agreed to put in some screening along the fence, but I don't think it'll be sufficient to screen out the dust and the noise. And so our concern is, first of all, whether this is appropriate. And, this strikes me as being as much a big deal to put on your lot as having a horse in a barn, except they won't have flies necessarily. But I think that we'll have plenty of dust kicked up and noise potentially. So if they do indeed succeed in having this, we would prefer that they not have it, because I don't think it's appropriate for the neighborhood. But if they do indeed, succeed in having this, we would like to have some kind of guidelines from the town that limit, how, the noise, and are they going to use motorized vehicles on this? There's nothing to prevent them from doing it. Are they going to, it's the kind of thing that people use, dirt bikes on that are motorized as well. And is there going to be any kind of limit on sound system that they would put out there? Because X game activities are generally associated with a lot of loud music stuff to go with it. And so we have concerns along these lines and wanted to bring it to the Planning Commission for discussion and recommendations. Thanks.
do you have any, go ahead, Paul.
No, I was just going to ask, what have your discussions with the neighbor been like?
They've been pretty calm,
Right. What have you talked about?
We've discussed, well, first of all, they really just thought this was it, that they had permission to put this on the lot line. They were under the impression that that was okay. And it was literally, I have pictures if you're interested, but it was literally on the fence. And now it's 10 feet from the fence, which is still pretty close. We should expect to be able to see children flying through the air, or teenagers, or whoever it's gonna be, flying through the air over our, because they will be up rather high in the air. If you want to go on YouTube and look at BMX biking and just see what they do, they do tricks up in the air and all this kind of stuff. And as entertaining as that is, we just as soon not participate in that. So we've had discussions with them about that, and they, when the town finally came out and saw what was going on, because there was nothing in their plan to indicate that they were doing this. They were asked to move it away from the fence, and then they've rebuilt the whole thing. It's back to being built. They claim it's not a dust issue. I can't imagine that it would be anything but. They are, you know, they're pretty intent upon putting this in. And they're trying to, you know, make us happier by agreeing to put some foliage between it and our home, our fence, the mutual fence. It was necessary for us to hire a real estate attorney to get the attention, you know, of the town about this going on in the first place. Because it was like my husband did most of the communicating with this. We would communicate about it, and it was like, well, there isn't anything in the plan that indicates that that's going on. And it's like, well, yes, but if you come and look, you would see that they have constructed a three-dimensional thing there. And so it was necessary for us to, you know, to get some advice on how to handle this. And then after the letter was presented, then the town did come out and inspect it and say, no, this is inappropriate to have this so close to the lot line. Is that what you were wondering, like, what's the discussion been like so far?
They've indicated that this is going to be permanent, or at least there for a while?
It's permanent. I mean, this is something this is not from the point of view of the neighbor that's putting this in, they feel that this is an architectural feature of their landscape architecture.
Okay.
And we consider it to be a structure, like, you know, like you're building. You know, when you compare this to a sports court, which is where people, you know, play handball or they play basketball, I mean, this is actually this is something that's this tall.
Yeah, I saw it, actually went by to take a look because I'm familiar with the property that.
Thank you.
And talked to one of the workers. He didn't know much about it. Asked him if I'd go back and take a look. And my initial impression was that with this lot in construction state and a lot of dirt having been moved around in the backyard and the pool being constructed, that my initial impression was it was something to do with the dirt while they're making, that's why I asked if it was definitely gonna be permanent, because it looks like, we'll just kind of have some fun with the dirt until the house is finished.
No.
So, and it seems odd to me that they would construct it before they're finished with anything else.
Yeah, we
That's just my
wonder
impression.
about that too, but, yeah.
I didn't notice the elliptical shape of it, but it did seem to have two higher berms on each end,
Mhm.
and then a series of smaller berms in the middle, almost kind of like an alligator's back or something like that.
And the pool is the landing zone?
Exactly. Actually, it's beyond the pool, it's between the pool and the property
The
line.
pool's right next to the home
Mhm.
that's being built, and then there's an area in between that they plan to put trees and things in, so that they won't have to look at the BMX track from their house. And then, you know, then there's going to be some foliage in between.
Would you say, and I'm just kind of eyeballing this, would you say that it would take up about the size of a tennis court from end to end?
You know, I would not be able to,
Okay.
I'm not enough familiar with the dimensions of a tennis court to say
Mhm.
whether it's probably comparable, but I don't really know, you know, exactly how it goes. I know that we're, on a 1 acre lot, we're not permitted to have both. You know, we're not permitted to have a swimming pool and a tennis court, correct? And,
I don't think there's
no,
anything.
not true?
We don't have a limitation on the number of athletic facilities you can have on the property, as long as they can fit.
You just play with more wet balls that way.
Okay, but it's probably as, this dimension, the same size as a tennis court, in terms of the width, maybe not.
But it is elliptical, so they in effect circle.
It's a loop.
Yeah,
it's-
loop around
yeah.
on the bike. And I'm not, well, I don't want to interrupt you, I'm not.
You're not interested.
I'm not familiar with it, but I would imagine it could be rather noisy.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, yeah, it's for bicycles, not for motorcycles.
Yeah, but
So-
motorized bicycles?
No, just bicycles.
Like the old
But-
Stingray type bike.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's nothing currently to stop it from being used with motorized vehicles on there.
It's a food violation.
Excuse me.
Well, I would just respond that motorized vehicles would probably be considered a nuisance and a
Mhm.
noise code violation that police and code enforcement would have to deal with.
In looking at your concerns and having seen it, I think you write down dirt and dust in the air from the riders using the track for many hours each day. And I think, that's obviously a potential concern. I wonder what the difference of that would be, because I know it's, if you do it right, I would imagine that's really hardly compacted dirt, so, but I still think it's an issue. But I'm wondering how it compares to, say, dust that comes up from having gardeners blow around the yard once a week. I know we get a lot of dust in our window tracks and stuff just from that. So it's kind of hard to determine what an acceptable level of that is. And what did you mean by drainage and grading?
Has anybody looked at what the impact of this is on the drainage of the lot? And how this, how this is going to impact us when it rains? As far as the dust kicked up, this is not going to be covered with grass. I mean, when the gardeners are out with their blowers, they, it's usually either things that are sidewalk, paved things and grassy areas, and it's not like an open area of dirt. This is
Right.
like dirt, even though it's compacted. And I would suspect that their gardeners will be back there blowing this off as well. And I think it could kick up, quite a bit of dirt. And also when people are playing on this, I think it could stir up quite a bit of dirt.
I think mud flowing down could be a concern. And again, I think that determines on how well it's built and how well the track is built and how well the dirt is packed.
And which way it's pointed,
Right.
right? Because it's a hill, and so the water's gonna be on top of it, right, one way or the other.
Yeah, but my understanding in building, the building department looks at the drainage plans for each property, and they have to be, each property has to be independent of other properties. So the water from that particular property has to be handled on that property or some other means rather than go on to neighbors, regardless of, and with a structure like this, of course, it makes it more complicated, but they could use the 10-foot setback area to handle the drainage.
Correct. Yeah, and I specifically told the applicant in this situation that they would need to present a grading and drainage plan that the city engineer would need to review, because by having those mounds, they could be altering the drainage patterns, and they're not allowed to do that, so we need to certainly review it and make sure it can all be captured on site and wouldn't impact neighboring properties. So that is one area of review that will need to occur.
But that would not have happened if this neighbor had not have come forward, because they wouldn't have come forward knowing that they needed to do that, right?
Well, yeah, if we're not aware of
Right.
the item,
Right,
I hope the building inspector would have noticed it.
yeah.
Perhaps.
Well, it could have been